So let's go back to Missouri, this border state, and let's talk about the football program there because I know you're so excited. You got a Missouri hat on. You got what's that quarterback? Is that
Nay.
Chase Daniels behind you?
Let's see. Let me see if I can do this right. Chase Daniels wishes that's Jay Cutler. We'll talk about him later.
uh, if we have time, time's short. Um, so our friend Eli Drinkwitz.
Yes.
I butchered his name last week
Oh,
too. He's in his fourth year with a record of 17-19. Not that great. And Missouri fans,
no.
they don't, they came into the SEC and they came in hot. And since
Yeah.
those first couple of seasons of the SEC, they've not
Yep.
done so well. And so
Yep.
their 2022 record, 6-7 overall, 3-5 in the SEC. They've got a new offensive coordinator in Kirby Moore coming over from Fresno State,
Mhm.
where the school averaged 200, or the team averaged 271 passing yards a game. They were the Mountain West champs. They have a quarterback, Brady Cook, a returner, but he's going to have competition from a
Yep.
transfer from Miami and Jake Garcia, and also
Mhm.
Sam Horn is in the mix. So when you look at new offensive coordinator, quarterback competition, what are you thinking, Darren? What does Kirby Moore bring Missouri, and who do you think is going to wind up being their starting QB?
I think Kirby Moore, you're going to see a lot more of what the offense, as far as from a design perspective, you're going to see a lot more of what the offense already looked like. I think one of the reasons why Eli Drinkwitz went the Kirby Moore direction is he found someone that can call plays that were running very similar styles. Um, More than an offensive scheme change, he wanted to find somebody that he trusted the thought process, that he could turn over play calling to. I think he felt like, if you're 3 years in and things aren't going well, you start firing coordinators. Typically, is the way that goes down 3 or 4 years in, and he was the coordinator. So he fired himself basically and said, "We're going to keep things the same for the most part, but you're going to be the play caller. I'm turning it over completely to you." And I think he's smart enough to get his ego out of the way and do that. Now, as far as the QB room, the understanding as of Eli Drinkwitz comments on Sunday is it's down to Brady Cook and who was the other person? Sam Horn. I just went blank. It's down to Brady Cook and Sam Horn. Jake Garcia is probably going to be in the 3 spot. And Brady Cook and Sam Horn, even at this point, he's not going to name a starter. Both of them will get play time when we look at their schedule in those first 2 non conference games. Then a decision will be made going into the conference, the first conference game on their schedule. So that's a pretty interesting way to do it, but I think he's showing that he's confident in both those guys, and maybe he feels like he gives them a little bit of a heads up to not name the starter prior to the conference when the conference games start.
Wouldn't be the first time a coach has done that.
Oh no, not at all, not at all.
They've got several returning wide receivers, including a transfer from Oklahoma, Theo Weiss.
Hmm.
They
Yes.
struggled with the running game last year, but they've got a big old offensive lineman transferring in from Eastern Michigan, Marcellus Johnson, who should help up front
Hmm.
and give their running back Cody Schrader some more room to operate.
Yes.
Let's talk about on the defensive side of the ball. Blake Baker and DJ Smith run the defense for Missouri. They were fourth in the SEC in total defense last year, so
Hmm.
that's a bright spot, something to build on.
Absolutely.
They've
Absolutely.
got some help on the defensive end side with Joe Moore coming in from Arizona State. They've got some terrific linebackers in Tyron Hopper, Chad Bailey, and a good solid secondary as well, Darren. Um,
Hmm.
so not a super flashy defense, but a pretty strong defense. Do you see this continuing this year?
I think they'll kind of maintain where they are, even if they were to take a step or two back. Still okay. You're still in the top half of the defenses in the conference, and I think there's a legitimate possibility that's exactly where they stay. The scheme they run is a very aggressive. It's at 4-2-5 where you've got hybrid guys that line up as safety and come down and have the strength and the know-how to end up right in the middle of the defense or right in the middle of the offense, running through the line to be aggressive in those blitzing schemes and stuff like that. So I think you'll still see a lot of that with them flying all over the field. That they've been bringing in the people, because the one thing you can't deny is that Eli Drinkwitz has recruited well, and as we talked about at the beginning of the show, he's got even a more of an advantage now to recruit, especially in state guys. So they've recruited well. Those guys are here and have been a part of the system. I think, and honestly, they need their defense to be there, because I think they still are going to have some offensive struggles this year. Might be wrong, but I think they're still going to have some offensive struggles, and I think their defense will do the same thing they did last year and really help them out and give them an advantage in situations that they need it.
Well, let's talk about their schedule. They start off with 3 straight home games: South Dakota, Middle Tennessee, and then a tough one, Kansas State.
Yeah.
They play Memphis. I believe that's at a neutral location before
Yes.
traveling to Nashville to play Vanderbilt.
Mhm.
They got LSU at home. They go to Lexington to play Kentucky. They've got South Carolina at home. They've got to go to Athens to play Georgia.
That's rough.
And then they have Tennessee and Florida back to back at home. And then they finish with Arkansas in Fayetteville.
This schedule really kind of stacks up well for them. And I said earlier, talking about the two quarterbacks, that they wouldn't name a starter until they got into conference schedule. That was incorrect. It's the Kansas State game. They will have a named starter before the Kansas State game. And that's going to be a big test for them. Kansas State is not to be taken. I know they're a Big 12 school. They're not an SEC school, but they are not to be taken lightly, especially if you're a Missouri. We're not talking about Alabama or Tennessee or Georgia playing them. We're talking about Missouri. So Kansas State is not to be taken lightly, but they do have all 4 of those games at home. If you're going to have to play LSU, at least don't have to go to Death Valley. Kind of the same thing for Tennessee. If you're going to have to play Tennessee, at least don't have to go to Knoxville. So those are some things that maybe can help their schedule. And even if there are a couple of ugly games where they really get taken out, at least it's home. You don't have the travel involved with it. And, just like we saw with Georgia last year, when they're at home, things get to going right. You sneak up on somebody and you make it a fourth quarter game. Who knows what can happen? So and I think you obviously have a better chance of that happening in Columbia as opposed to Baton Rouge or Neyland Stadium, in Knoxville. So I'd much rather have those 2 games at home.
Yeah, Missouri was in some games last year, some tough games, including, what was it, the overtime game at Auburn? It looked like they had that game won, and
oh, that's right. Yeah.
some unfortunate things happened, and
that was ugly.
So I look for them to be in a lot of games this year and be
Agreed.
competitive.